There is an upcoming conference devoted to cessationism. There are those that disagree with this conference. Those that disagree with this conference, are they themselves being hypocrites? There is, I believe, a 3-day conference devoted to cessationism. There's some people that a lot of folks know of. Some might not be as familiar as others, but there are a lot of people that many will be familiar with. Obviously, it's going to be held at Grace Community Church, so therefore John MacArthur will be there, and obviously a lot of people know who he is. You're going to have other people there, such as Virgil Walker and Justin Peters and others. And so the question is this okay? Is it right? There's a lot of folks that's given some pushback, saying that all this really is an echo chamber for those who disagree. It's going to be dry. They're going to be spending 3 days, imagine 3 days, speaking about what God can't do or what God won't do. And I'm thinking to myself, well, first of all, isn't that a little bit harsh to say that? One, because we haven't seen what they're going to say, what they're going to talk about. But then two, is it also hypocritical? Now, before I get into the hypocritical part, there is probably a reason for folks who are pushing back. There are those who believe that the way that people are exercising some of these gifts, there's an abuse, and so there has to be a pushback. And then, even not talking about those that are ultra charismatic who are maybe abusing gifts, there are those who would even be considered to be in the scholarly realm, who are saying things like, if you don't practice these gifts, then you are being sinful.
If you are not earnestly desiring spiritual gifts, especially prophecy, you are sinning.
Well, clearly that's not the case. There is no passage that tells us that you have to do these particular gifts. Which gifts must a person continue in? Which gift must a person show? Does a person have to speak in tongues? Does a person have to have the gift of healing? Does a person have to have whatever gift it is, you name it? No, that would be going a little bit too far. Even if you are a continuationist, that would be clearly unbiblical to state that you have to do these things in order to be saved. Or, as Sam Storm said, that if you don't do those things, then you are sinning. Now, in terms of being a continuationist or cessationist, I've stated before, I'm neither. I'm not a continuationist. I'm not a cessationist. Why? Because if I look at the passage, this is why I'm not actually a cessationist. If I look at the passage, 1 Corinthians 13:8. Love never fails, but there are gifts of prophecies. They will be done away with. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there is knowledge, it will be done away with. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, it's important, the partial will be done away with. Now, as I look at this passage, I can't conclude that this is stating what is going to, or when such and such is going to be ceased, when it's going to be done away with. Why? Because notice what's linked in this same passage. But if there are gifts of prophecies, also tongues, also knowledge, these are all a part of literally the same verse. And so if tongues are going to be done away with, if prophecy will cease, well, then what also has to happen with knowledge? And so they seem to be linked. By the way, all of these gifts, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I see it, these gifts tend to do with or deal with the proliferation of the gospel, letting someone know or magnifying what Christ has done. Prophecy, we think of prophecy typically that it's some sort of foretelling gift, when in most cases in the Bible it's foretelling. It's not some sort of predictive prophecy. That's the majority of prophecy in the Bible. It's just saying what thus saith the Lord is. And so if that's what it means to prophesy, remember 1 Corinthians 14:1 and 5 says that you should desire this gift. And it says malande hina proptuete, which means in order that you prophesied. I don't think he's a foretelling. I think that in order that you give a revelation. And I don't think that that has been done away with. As well as tongues, if in this case, in the scriptures, tongues were always a language, well, can I say that languages, the gift of languages that's used to bring the gospel to someone who doesn't know the language that I speak, could that gift still be in use? Well, there are people who don't know the languages, or we don't know the languages of everyone on the planet. And so where there might be an obscure village or tribe or some sort that we have not kind of bothered and left them to themselves, there are at least one that I can think of, and someone wants to give them the gospel and God supernaturally empowers that person to speak their language. Could that happen? Sure. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it won't. But these tend to be, as far as I see them, more evangelistic in nature, certainly knowledge, knowing what's happening, knowing the gospel and so forth. And so I think that's what these are mainly for. And so for that reason, I don't think that they have ceased. But do I call myself a continuationist? No, I do not. Because to do so kind of puts you in the camp of these people who are, I think, abusing these gifts. So what am I? I am what I call a biblical continuationist. In other words, if I see these gifts or someone says they have these gifts, whatever the spiritual gift is, the moving of the Spirit. I think however the Spirit moves is however the Spirit moves, and He will give you what you need to fulfill His ministry. And I think that's all we need to look at. But if someone is abusing it, then if they claim to have a particular gift, if they claim to have the gift of, let's say, tongues, the gift of healing, the gift of prophecy, then I say I'm a biblical continuationist because I want to see it done in a biblical fashion, the way it's done in the Bible. If not, then I'll judge you according to that, and I'll let everyone know that if you do it differently, then what you are doing is you are literally perpetrating a fraud upon the church. And so I say this so that people won't think that, hey, I'm a cessationist, and so I'm in agreement with what they're doing. That's why I'm defending them. No, they are allowed to have the conference, and which is why I think this might be a little bit hypocritical for some people. Why would you get together and have a 3-day conference to speak about what God is not doing? I don't know if it's necessarily that's the case. There might be discussions on how you push back, how you defend this argument with the gospel. But more to the point, why this might be hypocritical, isn't this what our churches are like every Sunday? Don't we come together for at least one day, for an hour, 2 or 3, to discuss what that collective group thinks or believes? That's literally what happens in churches. As a matter of fact, every other group, as a matter of fact, some of the same people that I've seen give some pushback and have something to say, they've been at conferences to do the exact same thing or for some doctrinal agenda. I don't think this is wrong. As a matter of fact, you could not point out anything unbiblical about what they're doing. So what this ends up being is more preference. And unfortunately, what I have seen is there's a dislike for some of the people that are involved. And so therefore, the whole thing is wrong. That is wrong as well. Because again, if you get together with other people to discuss why you believe, folks who believe the exact same thing that you believe, I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, if you do that and speak with folks that you believe, you're doing the exact same thing. The only difference is you're not in some sort of meeting place, or maybe you are in a meeting place. Maybe you're not devoting 3 days, maybe you're devoting 3 hours. Same thing. If time is the issue, well, then say that, but also give a scripture. And so I think the pushback on this just isn't warranted. If you don't like them, just say that. I disagree with a lot of what they're saying, and then go off of that. But I don't think that it's all that big of a deal, that big of an issue. That's my take. Again, I'm not a cessationist. If a person wants to speak in tongues, as long as it's biblical, as long as it's a language, and the gospel is promoted, Christ is being preached, who am I to say that's not the move of the Spirit if it's done exactly like it's in the Bible? If someone heals and they're healed immediately, like in the Bible, what am I going to say? That's not the Spirit moving. If someone gives prophecy and it happens to come true, or they're actually giving, in most cases, a revelation, which is what the Bible would call prophecy, well then what am I going to say? That's not the Spirit. So I don't go that far, and I might disagree, and I like some of the people there. I really do. Now, I don't know all of the people there. Matter of fact, I've never met any of them. I've spoken with 2 of them. But am I beholden to them? No. And so I just want to make that clear. But I think that anyone that's really pushing back, you've got to give a biblical doctrinal reason for why the pushback, not the opinions, because then what ends up happening is we find further reasons to segregate ourselves into different cliques or who we like or who we don't like. And I think that part is wrong. Amen.